Well, thanks for coming onto the show. I've heard of you quite a lot. And why don't you introduce yourself, Neil?
My name's Neil Sanders, and I am, I suppose, in this conspiracy milieu still. Like, I'm interested in things like mind control. So I was interested in like MKULTRA and like social media programs and that type of thing. Like I've written some books on MKUltra and the sort of declassified documents regarding that. I've also written a book about Charles Manson because I was fascinated with that case. And again, I appreciate this sounds kind of wooey, but basically, I think that the sort of mainstream story, so to speak, isn't actually accurate, and there's a bit more to it. It's actually far more sensible than that sounds. It's not like satanic mind control or anything like that. It was actually sort of to do with organised crime, really. But and then I wrote a book about Cambridge Analytica because I became very sort of interested in the. I mean, again, this is going to sound kind of wooey, but it's a fact that there are sort of programs out there that are trying to sort of direct narratives and push information towards certain people in a manner that sort of, well, it manipulates them really, and whether that's for sort of a political motivation or for sort of, you know, more corporate sort of motivation, but these things actually sort of exist, and that kind of ties in to an extent with the sort of the COVID response, because although I just think that a lot, if we're talking about, say, the alternative media's response to COVID, like pretending it doesn't exist, pretending viruses don't exist, and all this nonsense, I think a lot of that's just born out of backing themselves into a corner and having to be contrarian. There's essentially like the news comes on in January and says there's a pandemic or a potential pandemic, and uniformly everybody in the free thinkers movement, who tend to think rather similarly, strangely, they all went, no, there isn't. If the news says there is, then the opposite is bound to be true. And the problem was that essentially, particularly in the UK, we mucked about, and like, so we didn't actually acknowledge that there was a problem until it was a bit too late. We didn't lock down for like 4 weeks, etc., etc. That gives time for that concept to gestate and to sort of, you know, grab hold, and you draw certain things towards it. And before you know it, we're 2 months into a pandemic, and everybody in the alt media has told people that the virus doesn't exist, the tests don't work, and that nothing is happening. And by that time, it's a bit too late for them to go, oh yeah, no, actually there is a pandemic going on, isn't there? Like, crikey, that's a bit of a bugger, isn't it? So partly I think it was to do with that, and like to a degree hubris and just sort of contrarianism, and partly I think that actually once that sort of started, there is an element of people that found this useful. Like, I know, again, I'm very aware that this sounds quite conspiratorial, like, but there is a group of people who benefit from the sort of from the COVID denials thing, and essentially it boils down to disaster capitalists and people that want to undermine the NHS ultimately, because that's the sort of the end of this, is that, you know, if people are, well, it's several things. It's very, very difficult to hold the government to account for allowing like hundreds of thousands of people to die from a virus if you've got twats basically telling you that viruses themselves don't exist. And then like, and then the other end of that is that basically it crushes the NHS, which has been a desire of not only the Conservative government, but essentially the people that back the Conservative government, the donors, who are people from various think tanks connected to private medicine in America. And they've been sort of feeding a lot of this information. Also, bizarrely, a lot of it, this is what's crackers, is that it's positioned as being anti-establishment, this pretending COVID doesn't exist, and it's not anti-establishment at all.
No.
All of the COVID denial stuff has come directly from either the Conservative government, the GOP in America, or their backers, who essentially they're the landlord class. It's landlords and people with the oil refinery industry. Those are the people that didn't want lockdowns because they want you to be using their petrol and paying rent on their properties. They don't want you working from home. They want the economy ticking along and like that. And that's what sort of is annoying to me about this, is that there is actually a degree of what could be considered conspiracy theories that are particularly valid. Like, for example, in the UK, we spent billions of pounds on PPE that was not useful. It was completely useless, and it was bought from friends of the Tories, donors and stuff like that, people that don't actually make PPE. So there's a huge amount of corporate corruption involved in that. And again, there are sort of, machinations to want to undermine or destroy the NHS. That's an actual plot. That's something that's happening. And people were focused on other things like microchips and perpetual lockdown and stuff like that. And just what annoys me
this is basically the difference between conspiracy, like real conspiracies, and conspiracy theory, like fantasist stuff, which is why I quite like looking at your stuff, because you kind of stick with it is, it can get a bit conspiracy theory, but you try and focus on the corruption and actual like conspiracies that are going on, which is something I'm trying to break down on my channel, and where I'm talking to people is like, I'm not talking about individual little conspiracies. I think that word kind of, has been lost.
Yeah.
And when someone's speaking about some like absolute fantasist sort of conspiracy theory, they kind of go, oh, but you're trying to say conspiracies don't happen or corruption isn't real. And yes, of course it is. And that's what I'm trying to really focus on now. All the things that I saw were wrong were actually like, there's a nugget of truth there. There is actually something going on, actual corruption, criminal activity, just not the whole thing is organized and orchestrated how I used to think it was.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the problem, is that people look for like the unified conspiracy theory where everything's connected to everything. And
that's what I was completely part of for many years.
Everybody is, mate, because you get into this thing. Right, and this so why do people like conspiracy theories? I'll tell you why people like conspiracy theories, because they're fun, they're entertaining, right? They're interesting. And there's a gamut of conspiracy theories, right? Okay, there's stuff like, I don't know, UFOs and Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and Chupacabra and ghosts and stuff like that.
And all of that is fun. I love still looking into all of that stuff because it's just fun.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't really, let's say that they prove tomorrow that ghosts exist, or that Bigfoot's real, or that there's a dinosaur in Scotland. My day will continue. Do you know what I mean? It's fascinating. It's like, oh, brilliant. Oh, that's cool, right? But it doesn't matter, does it? It's really
it wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. And then you've got sort of further up the spectrum onto things like, say, MKULTRA, testing of weapons on civilians, that type of thing. The mafia's involvement in, say, the music industry and also in the CIA, and potentially things like, say, the Bay of Pigs, drug running and things like that. CIA, DEA involvement in cartels and, bringing drugs into Los Angeles and Chicago and stuff like that. These are conspiracies where they're starting to sort of have a sort of real world sort of effect. And those sorts of things do go on. But then, as I say, you've basically got this sort of what's bizarre about the thing is, to an outsider, the unified conspiracy theory, where basically everything's thing, and Freemasons, and these are proving grounds, and this is this, and it all goes up to this pyramid or whatever. It sounds really, really complicated and complex, and actually it's massively oversimplification, a massive oversimplification. The world is complex, and there's lots of different people who've got lots of different goals and want to, expand on them, maybe for political reasons, maybe for monetary reasons, maybe for corporate interests, maybe for ideological reasons, whatever. Okay, but it's not as simple as there's one person at the top, Lucifer or whatever, at the top of the pyramid, that's dictating everything. And this is kind of what happened, particularly I've seen this with regard immediately to the Ukraine crisis, right? Okay, people are I've seen all sorts of mad shit. I've seen people saying, "Oh, this is Putin clearing up the New World Order," and there's a trope that goes around saying that basically, well, he's already kicked the Rothschilds out of Moscow and blah blah blah, and it takes 5 seconds to look at it and go, they've still got a bank in Moscow. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't buy into that Rothschild shit anyway, to be quite honest. Again, I think that's a huge oversimplification, and I think that a huge amount of the anti-Rothschild stuff, strangely, comes from that Nazi book, Der Rothschild, like, which was a propaganda book. Like I said, the joke or the theory, the trope, is that basically engineered all major world wars since when was it? Was it since Napoleon's last?
Yeah, there was Napoleon War. Yeah.
But the idea was that they financed Hitler and they financed the other side. And again, it's like you were saying earlier, there's an element of truth to the West financing Hitler through, say, Union Oil and stuff like that. And even the Dulles brothers, who went on to form the CIA, they were actually lawyers that worked for German firms that were very connected to Hitler at one point. But it's not the same as the Rothschilds funding both sides like some sort of grand chess set. Like, and the irony of that is that it's completely ahistorical as well. Like, the Rothschilds were actually asset stripped by Hitler's Germany and kicked out. So again, a lot of that comes from actual pure Nazi propaganda that people just didn't really bother to check.
Well, did you yourself ever believe in some sort of grand conspiracy?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you get into these things, it's a new thing to you, and you start to. It's like when you find a new band that you like. You want everything, and I got into this in a slightly weird way, right? Because, as I say, I was always a kind of fan, JFK, blah blah blah. It's interesting. And then I did psychology at uni, and I became aware of MKULTRA, and also the psychology module that I did it had media construction, which was sort of creating mise-en-scene and symbolism in sort of film, and also how that's used in advertising. And it's stuff that I'm sure a lot of people, the basics of it are stuff like, if I'm looking over you like this, I look authoritarian. If I look up at you like that, I look like I'm submissive. That type of stuff. The use of colours of fonts and things in advertising to manipulate people, but potentially without them knowing. And so, to a degree, I was like, oh, hang on, some of this is really, really plausible. And it is based to a degree in fact. But then obviously, you get into all the videos and you send off for Millennium 2000, or the secrets of the dollar bill and stuff like that. What actually happened was I was trying to blackmail a friend into making a punk band with me, and so I did some music, and I put an Aldous Huxley sample on top of it, and I sent it off to Rich Planet, which is a conspiracy show, and the idea was to show my mate and go, there, he likes it, come and sing for my band. And that was literally the whole point. And Richard got in touch and said, oh, this is interesting. Do you know about this? Would you like to do a show? And I thought, yeah, why wouldn't I? So collect an hour's worth of stuff about MKUltra and go on there and chat about it. And that turned into another show, and that turned into another show. And
how long ago was this? At what age were you?
I was about 28 when I did that. I'm 41 now, so that was
so we're about the same age then.
Yeah. So I guarantee we've seen all the same videos and stuff like that. And then off the back of that, I was offered a radio show, Northeast Truth. I forget what it was, what it was called. But the guys on there were really nice, but they arranged interviews, so I got to speak to people like Jordan Maxwell and Hilda and he's escaped the guy that was friends with Kathy O'Brien and Bryce Taylor and people like that. So and you get completely involved in it because it's seductive and it's interesting and it's new. And for a time, I'm sure anybody that's into it irritates the living shit out of everybody because you're desperate to tell everyone about this, and you see the symbolism everywhere. This Atlantis stuff and eyes in pyramids and swastikas in every corporate logo, and again, to a degree, there's an element of truth in that. Like, but again, you kind of take it to wicked excess, and then I had a friend of mine that I got into this. He was yabbering on at me, and it suddenly struck me one day. I was like, "Oh Christ, this is boring! Like, can you not get there's other stuff going on in the world, basically?" So yes, absolutely. I was completely, totally a bit over the top with it. I've always liked to, and maybe I'm just like, waxing my own here, but like I've always thought of myself as like, that pyramid of conspiracy theories where it's like, these are facts, we have questions, this is bullshit. I like to think that I was in that bottom thing. Now, I don't know whether that's just me being deluded, and anybody who takes 5 minutes chatting to me who goes, "Well, do you think that now?" Well, that's very interesting, you poor sad bastard. But yeah. So I've always sort of erred towards that type of thing. All the Paul McCartney is dead, the Earth is hollow, the Earth is flat, the moon is fake. All of that sort of stuff. It's always kind of passed me by.
Yeah.
And I tell you what started sort of getting on my nerves with this whole thing is like the two aspects of conspiracy that started when YouTube became a big thing. One, nobody checks anything anymore. If a video says so and so says this book says this, then everyone will go, "Oh, brilliant!" And a good example of that is this fake quote from Louis Pasteur. Béchamp was right. The microbe is nothing. The terrain is everything, which supposedly supports the idea that germs don't exist.
Germs, yeah.
Like, come on. Anyway, that quote's completely fabricated. I mean, the book that it's supposed to come from exists, but that quote doesn't appear anywhere in that book. It's completely made up. And so you've got that sort of aspect of it, which was annoying, because it's just like we all like to pretend stuff. It's fun to make stuff up, but that's just bullshit. Okay, there's no truth to that whatsoever. And then the other thing that got on my nerves as well was suddenly everything's fake. All these school shootings are fake, and all these terrorist attacks are fake, and volcanoes are fake, and nuclear weapons are fake, and
everything's a hoax. Nothing exists. Yeah. All of reality is completely skewed.
Yeah, and aside from the fact that's like, oh come on, that's ridiculous. Like, I mean, aside, like anybody that's worked in like theatre or event management or anything like that will take 5 seconds to go, do you know how difficult it would be to arrange something like that to happen, and to happen live under the scrutiny of however many thousands of people that might be wandering by? And it's offensive, aside from anything else. It's like, again, it's that you're too far down the rabbit hole, for want of a better phrase. Like, kids are fucking dead. It's like you listen at the minute, like people telling you that the Ukrainian invasion, it's all, people have seen that film Wag the Dog, and they take that concept and they basically apply it to it, and they go, all right, this is what it is. And it's like, people are dying here. Like, I know you want to oversimplify it, and I know that ultimately, and this is like, I don't mean to be mean, right? But this oversimplification is about psychological comfort. It's like the same thing with the COVID bullshit. Like, there's a huge unknown in society. There's a virus, and we don't know how serious it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to affect you. You might lose your job. You might die. Your mum might die. Who knows, right? But some guy on the internet, right? He says viruses don't exist. Well, that's handy, isn't it? Because if viruses don't exist, I don't have to worry about this at all, right?
Yeah.
So, boom, done. Like, it's closed the loop in your brain, and basically you've got that psychological comfort. And then basically people band together, particularly in the echo chambers created by the internet, and go, yeah, I'm not scared. All these idiots wearing masks and stuff like that, they're scared. And it's like, you've constructed quite an elaborate fantasy to deal with reality. I think you are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you want to admit it, but I think that's why you've done it, because basically the fantasy is preferable to unknown reality, basically.
Yeah, and it's comforting to have an answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is what it was really with me. Like, I saw how screwed up the world was, how corrupt everything was, and this just gave me you know, a encompassing answer to all of it. You know, it wasn't like that. Oh, now I'm right. It's just no. Now I've got a fucking answer. I can
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
kill.
You feel like that you've got more of an understanding of the world, and so basically you can cope with the world a bit more because, as you say, like there's reasons. This might sound again but mean, but the idea that basically you've just caught a disease, or that you've just been made redundant, or that you've lost a relative, or society's gone to tits up or whatever. Okay, the randomness of that and the unfairness of that is incredibly difficult to deal with. And so again, it sounds contradictory, but actually it's far more comforting to think that you've been persecuted by a plot. Do you know what I mean? Like this was a pandemic.
This wasn't random.
Somebody sat in a room and I'm being persecuted. Like there's a reason for this, because at least if there's a reason to this, there's a way to stop it. If it's just a random event that's happened, then this is problem. Then you don't know what's going to happen. And it's the same thing with the Ukraine thing. It's like basically like nobody knows what's going to happen. This is actually quite concerning. Like, I mean, on the level that it is now, where basically, you know, civilians being killed, and we don't know how far that will sort of spiral. This could turn into, like, you know, a broader conflict. It could put up energy prices. It could just, you know, all sorts of things might happen. So if you know that, oh, it's all theatre, isn't it? This is nonsense, or actually, oh, Putin's the good guys, blah 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 blah. It's just a lot easier for you to process that and get on with your life, basically, rather than have that sort of this is the wrong phrase, but there's, you know, sort of Damocles basically hanging over you, basically not knowing when this awful sort of tension is going to ratchet up. And yeah, that's the thing, really. I mean, going back to an earlier point I was making, like the reason that people like conspiracies is there's numerous reasons. One is because they're fun. Two is because they give you an understanding of the world. They give you an explanation. They to a degree, and not everybody, but like some people, it becomes defining to them. Like, you know, I like this is I like, particularly when with the sort of the more outlandish things like, say, flat Earth and stuff like that. People are proud flat earthers, etc., etc., etc. And then the third reason that people are interested in conspiracies is because conspiracies do actually happen. There are actually, as you said, there's corruption, there's crime, these things that need questioning, and that are interesting as well. Basically, you know, just like socio-political stuff or corporate takeovers or stuff like that. And it's yeah, it's a complex world. And I still think even with some of those, which are with the real things, I think there's always a degree, because that's how the human mind works, to want to sort of, you know, categorize, box it away, make sure that it's this. And then, you know, then it's dealt with and you understand it, but it doesn't mean that things don't necessarily happen.
Yeah, which makes me like think of something I've been looking at and thinking about, like with, like we were just saying, it gives you an answer.
Yeah,
but sometimes it gives you an answer to a question that it doesn't even exist, but they've framed a question. So like when you look at the old 9/11 documentaries, they framed like the, say, controlled demolitions or stuff like that, when there already was an answer for the reason why 9/11 happened. Do you know what I mean? Do you find like there's like I don't know, these conspiracy theories are sort of a trap by people?
Yeah, because they're based in ideology. So, like, I mean, for example, like you've got the recent thing with coronavirus. So you've had people for 2 years, right, saying that the whole point is to lock people down and to force a vaccine on them, and the vaccine will have microchips, and ultimately this will lead on to a social credit system, and, you know, then before you know it, it's Logan's Run. And it's like, and none of that's happened. But rather than go, maybe we got that wrong, you have to incorporate it into your preconceived idea, which is basically like either, oh, we won by moaning on the internet. And it's like, you really want to go down that path, because if you won by moaning on the internet, then this is the most pathetic tyranny that I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, you know, Stalin didn't stop the Holodomor because Karen got on Twitter saying like, "Oh, it's bloody awful, this Holodomor, isn't it?" Like, none of that happens. So when you know, what actually happened, like particularly in the UK, was that the government decided we're going to do as little as possible. Right? Okay. So was the response to the disease good? No, it was badly done because they don't care, right? But it wasn't about this, again, this plot. And people had decided in January 2020 that it was 5G for a start.
It was, yes.
Like, remember, it was 5G that was killing everybody, and then that didn't happen. So then they've already said that basically, like, it's not real. So when it does start to happen, they have to incorporate that. So when people start dying, all of a sudden it's nurses killing people, and that makes literally no sense either. It's like June who lives across the road, right, who's been working in that care home for 14 years, who's cared for those elderly people, who treats that job as a vocation. She got up in February and went, "This is the perfect opportunity to murder some people. I reckon I can get away with this." Like, why? Aside from anything else, why? And people go, "Well, because they're just doing what they're told." And it's like, oh, if you can figure out, okay, this didn't happen, by the way, but if you on the internet can figure out that they're giving high doses of this drug to off people en masse, I'm sure June's figured that out, okay? Why has June not gone to her supervisor and said, "I can't help notice after I give these people this injection, they drop dead"? Like, it's bullshit. And what's more is that again, that's one of these stupid things where actually you're protecting the government. You're taking the people who are on the front lines of a very difficult situation who want praising, and you've suddenly turned them into murderers. Like, and this is where the aspect of it comes in, that basically, like, there's elements of like the Conservative government. And again, I appreciate this does sound conspiratorial, right? Okay, but there are elements.
There are conspiracies. It's fine. Yeah. Let's just not make too many assumptions. Then you become a fantasist.
I think that's the way to look at it. I'm just appreciative that like of what your channel does, and I don't want to sort of like drag you back into it or anything like that. But anyway, the CRG, the ERG, basically is a group of very hard right conservative backbenchers and people who are connected to donors, which are the think tank, the IEA, connected to the Heritage Foundation in America, and then various sort of organisations that want to privatise the NHS, basically. And so they've seized upon this to in order to just exacerbate the crisis, basically, in order to like put undue pressure on the NHS, and then finally they can bring in private American firms. And so a lot of the sort of COVID denial stuff has actually come from the government. There's a series of doctors, like people like Sunitra Gupta and Carol Sikora and Carl Hennigan and people like that, Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Kulduff, who've all been promoting the concept of herd immunity. And what herd immunity means is basically like, do nothing, do absolutely nothing, let it spread through the population. And can you believe that the Conservative government were fairly keen on that, because it involves them doing sod all, right? And it's basically, it's a lot cheaper. And they'd run out of money anyway, because they moved all their money into their, like, this ridiculous track and trace, into, you know, lining the pockets of their friends. And this is one of the things that the alt media didn't sort of pick up on, is that basically, like, all of this COVID, these doctors that were promoting herd immunity, they were actually financed by George von Opel, who's a conservative donor, and from the Opel car family, and the Behaviour Insight Unit, or the Nudge Unit. So why is and then the Treasury, the HM Treasury, was behind the paper where the idea that lockdown killed more people than the virus came from. So these massive COVID denial tropes have actually come from the government themselves. Why? Well, because the government basically, although on the face of it they wanted to do what they should do, you know, look favourable in the international community and stuff like that, what they actually wanted to do was nothing. And so that's why you've got this steady COVID denial from the Mail and the Telegraph and the Sun and Talk Radio and Fox News and Off Guardian and all of these talking heads like Peter Hitchens and Toby Young, all of these have got a direct connection back to the Conservative government. And so this is the irony, is that the alt media has been gamed. January, basically, they said, oh, there's no virus. Like, we don't care. Like, you know, the news says there's a virus, so the logic dictates that the opposite is true. There's no virus. By the time we're actually coming into lockdown, like the government, through people like David Halpern and various other people, Patrick Vallance, have actually been on telly, and the Prime Minister himself has been on telly basically saying, we should go for herd immunity. We should take it on the chin, let it rip through society. And the public response to that was, "Are you mad?" So they rolled back and started ostensibly, like, we had the lockdown, we advised masking, etc., etc., etc. It took 3 weeks before Dominic Cummings undermined the lockdown, and so this is the war that you've got. You've got basically a series of people who, like the sage scientists and Chris Whitty and people like that, who are going, yeah, this is dangerous. We really need to do something. It's not going to be pleasant, but we need to just do it and do it properly. And then you've got a series of other people who are trying to put the idea into society that this is all nonsense and it's completely over the top, the response, and that we don't need to do any of this. But the reason that they want to do that is purely monetary. Is that they want to save money. And the irony is that the alt media seized that. They looked at these things and they seized it and they went, yep, that sounds right, brilliant, we'll do that. And all they've done is help protect the government. And right now, because we've dropped all the measures and such like that, essentially what we've done is, like, brilliant. They've changed the public mood to the point where everyone is so sick and tired of everything that they'll basically go, well, do nothing then. Do nothing. I don't care anymore. I'm so bored of this. I want to go to cinema.
We've all had enough.
Yeah, everybody's had enough. But this is the problem, is that basically, like, it kind of ties in again with this idea of, like, things like Cambridge Analytica and even Brexit and stuff like that. The alt media is a collective. They're a group that has defined properties. And if you have defined properties, you know, like, and I know, like, particularly, say, if we had this conversation 2 years ago, certain flags in an article and you're on it. Oh, it says George Soros. Oh, it says the Rothschilds. Oh, it says this. Well, it must be right then. And do you see what I mean? So it's like with Pizzagate and stuff like that. It references paedophiles. It references underground things, which, again, there's an element of truth in, but it ticks all the truther boxes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's this and this and this and this and this, and in that way, as I say, like, this is how you can manipulate whole swathes of people into basically, like, being the propaganda arm that they couldn't legitimately do. Is crazy in a way, isn't it? Like, but as I think you've been looking at it, and I saw your video that you were doing where it was in regards to where these conspiracies come from, and there's always been an element of that with regards to, say, people like the John Birch Society and, like, the CNP, World Anti-Communist League, places like that. Interestingly, that's where Cambridge Analytica came from.
Yeah,
it came from, and what Cambridge Analytica is a internet manipulation program where it basically steals your data. It finds out what makes you tick, finds out what makes you happy, finds out what makes you angry, and then it caters social media posts to push those buttons. So in regard to, say, Brexit, it was fear of immigration, overreach of the EU, Nazification of the EU, all of this rubbish and stuff like that. And so it pits you into that echo chamber, and then basically that's all you believe. And with regards to America, they pitted Trump as the anti-establishment hero, Trump the billionaire as the anti-establishment hero. And
that had red flags going for me straight away from the get-go. When I was, like, coming out of the truther stuff, you know, I saw truthers backing him and acting like, oh, he's going to bring down the New World Order and the establishment, and I was just like, he's part of the establishment. What don't you see here?
Yeah, but again, this is the gamification of it, basically, where you know, the lines between reality and fantasy on the internet are so sort of like gossamer thin, aren't they? It's just ridiculous. Like, and again, that's the point. He ticked the boxes. Now, again, I appreciate this is a bit conspiratorial, but do you know he had the McMahons, Vince McMahon and from WWE on his team for his candidacy.
Yeah.
Now, a friend of mine pointed out that he's playing a WWE character. He's just being the contrarian. Apparently, I'm not a big fan of it. Apparently, he's very similar in character to Stone Cold Steve Austin. The sort of doesn't take crap, doesn't listen to it, goes his own way, blah 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 blah. And again, it's a marketing strategy, isn't it? Like QAnon, which is ludicrous, like is essentially politics mashed together with wrestling. It's that wrestling type scenario. And what it's done is it's drawn people towards Trump and towards politics that have absolutely no interest in politics whatsoever. And in a similar way, that's how I think that the conspiracy world does get gamed. Like, people haven't really got an interest in, big pharma with regards to coronavirus, but they've been utilized and sort of like fed this crap information and told, go out and spread this information. And again, what that does is it creates echo chambers where, to the point where anybody that's telling you anything other than that, they're the enemy, or they're a shill, or they just don't know, do they? They're just poor, they need to do their own research, don't they? And stuff like that. So yeah, it's ridiculous, basically.
Yeah, I recognize so much of the language now, like all these people saying the same stuff, and when somewhere between 2015 and 2018, I started seeing a lot more like vile preachers like Tucker Carlson using our language. And all these other big, like you said, Candace Owens, or even over here, GB News. Now you got like Neil Oliver talking about the New World Order, and you're like, what the hell's going on?
But you know what's interesting? I'll tell you what's going on. This is the gamification, because like Tucker Carlson is it's Fox News, which is Murdoch, and so immediately you go, huh? Why are we even believing that? Again, conservative Tory donor connected to oil refinery industry tangentially, basically. And then Tucker Carlson also takes money from the Kochs. And this was the thing. It's almost like the creation of the alt-right, which was done through the Regnery family, who is the far-right American aristocracy, runs Regnery Publishing, published books by Trump. He was the person behind Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer is the person that coined the phrase alt-right. Dave Rubin, financed by the Kochs. What's his name? The stupid one who does the Blaze, financed by the Kochs. Glenn Beck, financed by the Kochs. Candace Owens, financed by the DeVos family and the Kochs. Tommy Robinson, financed by the Kochs. There's a theme that's running through this. And this is exactly what I'm talking about.
That's the connection with the John Birch Society.
Exactly. The Kochs go back to the John Birch Society. They're also in the Heritage Foundation, and they're in the CNP. Other prominent members of the CNP were people like the Mercers, Steve Bannon, Mike Pence, Mulvaney, all basically the DeVos family, Eric Prince, all of those people that are connected to the Trump administration.
I feel like they were I call them conspiracy light, LITE, like as if it's a brand, because they're not full on. They're not like Jordan Maxwell, Alex Jones, or nothing that. But Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, all these fellas.
It gives sort of like a wink to that sort of thing.
Dog whistling conspiracy theories.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of dog whistling. I remember ages ago watching, what's his name? I can't remember his bloody name. The guy from the Love Police, Charlie, what's his name?
Oh, yeah.
The guy that went on the 9/11 thing and then just got like oiled because he decided that 9/11 wasn't an inside job.
Because he was a show. I thought that. Yeah. I thought that. Charlie no,
everybody does. Everybody does. But he said, I remember him saying, actually, there is quite a lot of anti-Semitism in the conspiracy world. And at the time I thought, no, there isn't. Let's have a look. Shit, there is actually, isn't there? There's a huge amount. And a lot of it is people don't realize that it's like the Rothschild thing. It's like, you do know the source of this is not as a pejorative, proper card-carrying Nazis. That's the source of that conspiracy theory. And then the sort of the dalliances with Holocaust denial, and then for a time there was that Hitler worship with like the greatest film never told, all that crap, and like, do you know what I mean? But again, this is all that right wing, erring towards far right type of ideology, and again,
it's quite like, more like right wing libertarian as opposed to like right wing conservative.
Well,
it's a little bit different on this spectrum of the political like compass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but fundamentally, what it boils down to is we don't like anyone that's not rich and white. We don't like gay people. We don't like black people. We don't like foreigners. And quite frankly, we'd like to stay wealthy and in control. So regardless of the sort of iterations of that, like, do you know what I mean? It's fundamentally like what you consider a power grab, really. Like, but that is a real thing, that basically there are right-wing groups who are incredibly powerful, is essentially connected to the oil industry, that that are promoting these tropes. And again, what I found, and again, like, this makes me sound like, oh, he's got it sorted, he knows what he's doing and stuff like. What I found to be useful, right? Okay, is if someone gives you a piece of information, try and find the source of that information. Like, there's a great book by, oh, what's the name? Deborah Holstaff, or the woman that was involved in the, oh, his name's gone out of my head as well. The book's called Denying the Holocaust, and it basically looks at the tropes of where Holocaust denial comes in. Deborah Lipstadt. And basically, what it does is it goes, okay, here's the trope, say there's a swimming pool at Auschwitz. Where did that information come from? Right. Who was the source of that information? Right. Is it accurate? And once you sort of break it down to that, it becomes rather, particularly with this sort of Holocaust denial, you go, all of this comes from neo-Nazis. Or it was only neo-Nazis that noticed these discrepancies. Huh. Like, do you know what I mean? And so when you drill down into that type of area, you can find out whether this is plausible or not.
Well, this is exactly what I'm trying to do. You know, I'm trying to find out, okay, who actually came up with such and such conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
You know, who actually came up with it? Who's spread it? Who's pushed it? You know, and like you said, drill down to the actual bottom. Properly check the source, because when you do, it probably will shock you.
Yeah. A lot of the time it is, isn't it? And like, and you go, oh no, oh that's yeah.
Like, I feel like I've been had for like so many years. You know, these people had me.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is that to a degree. I mean, that's the other thing that I've seen a lot more. I mean, usually, as you said, like, you know, you've got that brilliant video with we're talking about the John Birch Society and stuff like that, and like, a lot of it came from the book None Dare Call It Conspiracy. You know,
he was F. Gary Allen, straight out of the John Birch Society, wasn't he?
Yeah, and now here's the thing, right? Okay, what was the major sort of theme of that? It's this communist takeover. Like, the New World Order is somehow this Jewish, at the same time, communist sort of like conglomerate that's going to take over the world. And the anti-communism thing, it ties into, say, like, you know, McCarthy era and stuff like that. There's two types of anti-communists, right? Okay, there's people that don't want to become communist, right? Okay, which is understandable. But again, communism has become one of these snarl words that I don't think people quite understand. When they say communism nowadays, they mean tyranny or totalitarianism. They don't mean like a people's revolution where we redistribute the source of the wealth, and the base and the superstructure are completely connected, like in a sort of Malthusian sense. They don't mean that, because they don't really understand what that is. What they mean is like totalitarianism. But there's two types of anti-communists. One, people like, say, for what a better example, George Orwell, who basically just went, fascism's crap, communism's crap, we don't want either of those. right? Okay. Then there's the anti-communist, which is a euphemism for Nazi. And again,
Mm.
that's where you have certain things like the World Anti-Communist League, which is essentially it's a Nazi organization. And again, it's not pejorative. They run death squads in South America. They're connected to people like Laszlo Pastor and various other sort of proper historical Nazis. So yeah, this is where a lot of this comes from. And at the minute, that's the big thing. Like the World Economic Forum, it's communism. It's communism. Like this idea of encroaching communism has come back. Like and it's all nonsense. I mean, like for example, again with the World Economic Forum and stuff like that, Coca-Cola's involved. BT's involved, MasterCard's involved. Do you think any of them want communism?
No.
No, exactly. This is the point. But they use the snarl words. And again, in this sort of gamification, it's kind of cruel because like with if you think of yourself as an anti-totalitarianism or whatever, or let's just like QAnon, right? Okay, that's for nice people. Like they're fighting against the tyranny, the evils of a global paedophile ring. Like, do you know what I mean? It's set up so that you're the hero.
Yeah.
And in a strange way, like the COVID denial thing was set up in the same way. We're the resistance, you're the hero, and blah, blah, blah. Bit bloody embarrassing, really. Like, did you see that Ukrainian woman go up to the Russian soldiers and give them some seeds and say, put these seeds in your pocket so flowers bloom when you die?
Yeah.
Right? That's resistance, right? That woman has made everyone who's been moaning about wearing a mask in Tesco's for the past 2 years look like a big girl's blouse. Like, you should be ashamed of yourselves, absolutely ashamed of yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, and again, that was the other thing that got me about the COVID denial stuff, right? Okay. The Queen's a lizard, the moon's fake, right? Okay, whatever. Justin Trudeau's a fucking robot, whatever. Who gives a shit? It's all fun, doesn't matter, right? Okay, telling people that a virus doesn't exist and that a test doesn't work, you're going to kill people. In fact, you have killed people. I know people that have died who were fans of yours, right? Okay, and they listened to you, and you told them erroneous information that was detrimental to their health. For what? For clicks and for money, and because you got into that thing. This was another thing that happens to say, like when that sort of swathe of like Hitler worship, Holocaust denial and stuff like that, even when flat earth came along, I saw a lot of people go, I'm gonna have to go along with this because that's what the audience wants. The audience wants me to tell them that the Holocaust isn't real. So I can't turn around and say, no, I don't believe that, because you're going to lose a huge swathe of the audience. And for a lot of people, it's clicks. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not only the money stuff, but basically as well, you wake up like, you're popular on Tuesday, you say something and you're not popular on Wednesday. Again, you might start to think, well, maybe I'll just tell them the things that they want to hear. So that they embrace me still, so that I'm not kicked out of this club, because I was selling this many books and blah blah blah, and now all of a sudden I'm a pariah because
I said this about David Icke. Like he's always got the perfect answer. Like when the flat Earth stuff came around.
Oh, he just skated around that, did he? It's an illusion. So
everything's an illusion. Exactly. He doesn't lose any fans. Then he can he can bring in the flat earthers and everything. He's just got that perfect one, hasn't he?
Yeah. Same thing when he did the Holocaust denial thing that got him kicked out of Australia, or not allowed to enter into Australia. He was pandering to the audience at that point. But here's the stupid thing: it's like, I don't want you to pander to the audience. I thought you were revealing stuff to me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's what gets my, like, you take a one step back and you go, you all think the same. This isn't free thinking. This is a mantra, right? This is like, and again,
that is what I noticed.
You're not allowed to step outside it for, and you're dead right, mate. You're not allowed to step outside of it for a second, because then everyone goes, well, hang on, this is familiar. But I think, again, that's because basically for some people, the fundamental reason of this is to simplify the world. And if you add complex iterations into this, a lot of the time people don't want that. They don't want to know the truth. They want to be reassured that they were right. And no, again, that's not everybody. That's not every theory. But there is a lot of that, and particularly in times of crisis like this, like a pandemic. What's disappointed me as well is the number of just abject grifters, just like telling you exactly what you want to hear for money. And like, what? There's a meme that goes around like all these doctors who are anti-vax have absolutely nothing to gain from it. Blah blah blah. And it's like, piss off. They've got everything to gain from it. Like they've set themselves up as a hero. They've got a ready-made audience. They've got a demographic that they can sell to. Wakefield bagged a supermodel, for Christ's sake. Like, do you know what I mean? Like there's innumerate reasons for people to do that. Like, and a lot of the time it boils down to pay me money. That Moore and Andrew Kaufman's got a fucking hair transplant out of these idiots. Like seriously. Like, and it's all just bullshit. It's all just telling you exactly what you want to hear because you kind of heard that before, or to give you an out and stuff like that. And that aspect of the alternative media really gets on my nerves, to be quite honest.
Yeah, they are just. COVID was definitely the thing for them, wasn't it? To catapult everyone into it, because everyone was affected by it. I think that's like one of these reasons why like conspiracism is so big right now, because everyone's actually been affected by it. Like you said, every time there's a crisis or something, you know, people get sucked into it. I guess like for you and me, like our ages, you know, 9/11 would have been that sort of catalyst. 9/11 and the Iraq war coming together. Like,
I think you're right. I mean, obviously before that there was things that like JFK, Jack the Ripper, stuff. But I still categorise those in the fun sort of thing. I think you're right. One of the first videos that I saw was that Ed Begley Jr. Reopened the investigation to 9/11 thing, and bizarrely, my mate's granddad had it on DVD. And we were around, so I was like, "What's this?" And like, you know, wow, like, you know, explosions, and on the front cover it shows the puffs coming out the side and stuff like that. And it's astonishing, so because it opens up a new sort of, it's like a new lens on the entire world.
yeah.
But once you're in that, and again, I still think, like, I have to be honest with you, I still think there's something odd about 9/11, and I think that there was, particularly the connection to Iraq and the Iraq war. I don't think there were weapons of mass destruction. So you could argue that was a conspiracy. Like, I don't know what happened in 9/11. I don't think the Jews did it. I don't think Bush did it. I don't know what happened. I just have questions about it because I don't think the official story is quite right. What happened?
I would agree. Like, I would agree. Like, full disclosure to anyone watching that thinks I don't look at any conspiracies or anything. When it comes to 9/11, like, I don't think it was an inside job. Like, all of the things that I used to think, like the controlled demolition, all of those things that built up that conspiracy theory, I don't subscribe to any of that anymore. You know, I do think 19 hijackers took hold of the planes and did crash them, and that is it. However, I do have questions about Saudi involvement, Pakistani intelligence involvement, and maybe the American government and UK government, maybe even covering some of those things up because they have connections with those people. Yeah. You know, there is possibly even something like that going on.
Even drilling down into the sort of the connections between elements of the American government and the Bin Laden family and stuff like that. That's kind of cagey. Like, okay, who knows? There might well be a particularly there might be an explanation for it that we're not privy to. But at the minute, the facts I was presented to him, it doesn't sit quite right with me.
Yeah, to me, it's not a false flag anymore. Basically, you know, that's just not what it is anymore.
No, I don't think. No, probably not.
But like you were just saying about disaster capitalism, like I think that's what happened. So look, this massive attack happened. How are we going to benefit off of it?
we'll make hay. Well, there's the
Let's do
famous
something.
thing, the chap that says, like, we'll take lemons and turn them into lemonade. Like, this is what I think happened with regards to COVID. Like, people are saying, oh, well, the fact that the government are doing X, Y, and Z proves that the virus isn't real. It's like, it doesn't prove that the virus isn't real. It proves that basically there was a crisis and they decided, how can we turn this to our advantage? Like, well, by getting money out of it, basically. And so that's it. So making hay whilst the sun shines, because, you know, there's some scurrilous people in this world, like, totally. So and yeah, you know, I mean, again, yeah, there's some scurrilous people in this world, but at the same time, like, much of like the COVID stuff is just bullshit. It's utter bullshit. Like,
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like what they were saying about, you know, Boris's actions could show that he doesn't, you know, believe in the virus and anything like that. And I think, you know, to be fair, I think, yeah, he's a conspiracy theorist. The government is being run by conspiracy theorists, but they had to pretend that they cared.
Yeah, according to Dominic Cummings, the reason that aside from wanting to appease his donors, that Boris Johnson wanted to go for the herd immunity thing was because he thought that it was going to be like swine flu, whereas we've seen this before, it'll fizzle out. Like, he didn't take it quite seriously enough. Like, so that's quite, you know, that's one of the things where, oh, right, yeah, see how the world is a bit more complex than actually we thought.
Yeah, I think these past 2 years have really cemented it for me, how much it's just corruption and a bit of incompetence and a whole hell of a lot of nepotism.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I thought was the grand conspiracy. It actually boils down to those things. It's nothing else.
This is the thing, right? Okay, there are rich people who have been rich for generations and want to remain rich, right? Okay, so there is that, again, that nugget of truth.
And that's not bad. That's not wrong. It's not a bad thing to do.
No, not necessarily. Now, they might do terrible things to maintain that, or, you know, but now we're getting into, say, social constructs and stuff, like, you know, is the class system fair and stuff like that? Like, do you know what I mean? Which is not the same as, oh, that's the Illuminati, that is. Like, it's just not the same. Now, are there, like, meetings like Bilderberg, Le Cercle, and stuff like that, where basically these powerful people tend to lobby in order to push the world in a particular way that probably isn't going to benefit Joe Normal or you and I? Yeah, absolutely. That's society. Like, it's not quite the same as there's a unified theory. Like I say, the concept of the unified theory is like, how long has this unified theory been going on for? Hundreds of years. Why haven't they finished it? What's stopping them? They own everything, right? If that was really what they wanted to do, why? And they are all powerful. Why have they not just done it?
No.
Never a good explanation for that. And the explanation for that is because it's not as simple as that. There isn't one theory that's propelling people towards this. There's lots of different people who've got lots of different ideas, and, you know, it's like anything, like timing, luck, etc. plays a part into whether any of this sort of like expands and sort of goes anywhere, really.
Yeah,
but, like,
it goes on what you were saying earlier about like the crisis actor kind of stuff. You know, that to me, I was like, well, that means they control like literally everything.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the point yet that they had actually taken over everything. They've been trying for generations and centuries to take over everything, but now you're doing this. Like, I guess that means they've won. You know,
what me about the crisis actors is like, these people kill people, right? Okay, like, you know, if we're these people, right? They kill people. Why are they going to fake killing people? And well, and the answer that I was given was, well, then there's no crime, is there? It's like, A, why would they care? And B, yeah, that's still a crime, right? And then I was like,
fraud.
Right. The thing that got me with crisis actors is like, I don't know if you've ever met an actor, right? Okay. Have you ever met an actor that didn't want praise for their performance? that sort of goes against the entire point of being an actor. So
Yeah.
what do these actors get out of it? Well, they get given some money in a house, right? Okay, all right, but they're never allowed to be an actor again. Well, no, obviously. And what if they say mention this 5 years down the line that they were involved in Sandy Hook and it was all fake? Well, then the government will murder them. It's like, then why not do it in the first place? Why
Yeah.
this fucking palaver of like
We pretend to
it's
murder them, give them money, and then if they speak out about it, we'll murder them.
yeah, like it's
Make
like
it
oh,
make sense.
and then again like, but this is for people just forget that oh yeah, human beings are human. It's like with the garden parties and stuff like that. Like, oh, Boris Johnson's got a garden party going on. You know why? Because he knows COVID isn't real. It's like, oh, bollocks to that. It's like, have you ever met people? People do really stupid things that are massively detrimental to the health for two reasons. One, because it's fun, and two, because we're lazy sods. Right? Okay, that's why people drink too much. It's why they eat crap. That's why they don't exercise. It's why they drive too fast. It's why we take sketchy drugs that we've bought off some sketchy bloke in a sketchy club and take them off the top of a sketchy toilet system, right?
Yeah, I've been to Roxy.
Like, does that indicate that drugs don't kill people? No, it doesn't. It indicates that people will go, all right, why not? 50 quid. Yeah, fair enough. Like, and it's the same thing with the garden parties. Like, you know, that's the human nature. Like, why do people like they have unsafe sex with people they don't know? Does that mean that they know that HIV doesn't exist? No, it's because the human brain tends to go, oh, it probably affects somebody else.
And they're reckless. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's why people drive fast. That's why people drive drunk. That's why people have affairs. That's why people do all sorts of things because they think they'll get away with it. Like, it's not indicative that everything is fake. And again, this assigning of these attributes to people because it fits your preconceived notion. That's what's so daft again about the sort of elements of the alternative media is they portray themselves as free thinkers or whatever, and they're not. They're following the company line.
Yeah, and everyone's just repeating it, and it is just talking points. You know,
Totally.
since you hear it so many times, you're just repeating same things over and over.
I mean, yeah. I mean, to a degree, you kind of sort of have to, because when that's your thing, like, you know, it's like being a comedian or a band or whatever. Like, you've only got your songs or your set or whatever. So you might have to do the same thing over and over again. I think this has been exacerbated a lot by social media. Exacerbated or exposed, that's an interesting conversation, where basically like because you get to see the same person again and again and again and again and again, prominent people, like they've not come up with new things for decades. Sometimes it's still the same thing, or they'll put a twist on it. It's not reptilians anymore, it's Sabbatian Frankists or whatever, and it's like, oh, is it? And you know, that sort of thing, or with surprisingly little evidence, because there also has been a change, I think, and like it doesn't necessarily mean that they were any more true, but the way that you present conspiracy theories, it used to be in books and in live presentations, and you actually had to do a bit of work, like because YouTube didn't exist, you had to find the obscure sort of sellers, find the books, go along to the meets and stuff like that, actually sit down and read them. Now, you don't really need to. In fact, I would put money on the fact that a lot of people don't bother reading any of the books anymore. They just get the sort of potted highlights with a 10-minute YouTube video. And that's partly because of the way that people have changed, you know, the way that we consume information.
Yeah, our media consumption is completely different nowadays.
Totally. But that sort of 10-minute sort of bang, 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 bang. It's, again, what's the word? It's sort of like, it's beneficial for conspiracy theories, really, isn't it? Because you've got like 10 minutes, give us the potted highlights. Like, what? Bases on the moon? That sounds amazing. And there's not enough time in that to get into an argument, look at the evidence or whatever. But it draws you in. I think that's you know, it's like all of these things. There's a detriment to that. And like, there's, in as much as basically oversimplify stuff, but also, you know, it's a tool, really, isn't it? You could use that like yourself and like debunk the funk and stuff like that, swell down mutton and stuff like that on Twitter. They're using this platform to bang, like laser point, sort of like, boof, this is the rebuttal. So it can work in different ways and stuff like that. But
yes, like you said before, you know, it's a tool. It's like a hammer. You can do multiple things with a hammer or with a knife.
Yeah,
you know.
but again, like, when people live on social media nowadays, don't they? So when the world is smaller, and when you've got the things like, if I write something and people disagree with me, they'll pile on me. So I might not bother to write that, or I might, in fact, go the opposite way and write something that I know loads of people will go, "Oh, you're so clever." Like that is manipulation within itself, and that's even before you get into the sort of the physiological response that you get, like the dopamine, serotonin response that you get from interactions on social media, whilst at the same time closing off your world, creating this echo chamber, creating this sort of like this very, very small cult-like thing where essentially there's no deviation from the ideas. And I think we're almost in like a perfect storm at the minute, because we've got this social media, we've got this YouTubes and stuff like that, we've got the interest in it, and at the minute we're in a world crisis, like, and people look for answers. And again, the added problem on top of that is that people have seen this particular group of people, and a lot of people have gone, "Oh, I'm making some money from you. Oh, I'm going to tell you exactly," particularly, say, anti-vaxxers and stuff like that, like, you know, your Dale Bigtrees and your Andrew Wakefields and all of this sort of stuff, your Andrew Kaufmans. Like, these are despicable charlatan shits of people, like your Thomas Cowans, your Rashid Butars, your Shiva Ajidoras, all of these guys, like absolute just dismal, terrible, awful people. I do hope they get the flesh-eating disease. And again, that sort of thing on top of this is just, you know, it's grifters. Grifters are going to grift, aren't they? Grifters look for the weakness, and I'm not going to go at people. I'm saying that people are in an emotional state because of the world. Like, they want answers, and so they give you answers, but these answers aren't necessarily the truth.
Yeah, like I said, it's happened every time there's a world crisis. After World War I, after World War II, after French Revolution, all of these things. You know, after smallpox, after Spanish flu, after everything that a lot of people have to deal with, after the financial crash.
Yes.
You know, Occupy sprung up.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff that came around.
I have actually got a conspiracy theory about Occupy, but
well, a lot of people that came from that era, like, also got quite big during Gamergate.
Oh, again, but that's your
what's the connection there?
Well, it's
I mean, because who I'm going for straight away was Tim Pool. You know, like Tim Pool and Luke Rukowski and all that.
And Byler. Yeah. Well, do you know? Well, okay, all right.
Come on,
and again,
let's get conspiracy.
Because the FBI created Occupy Wall Street. It was started by a chap called Sabu. Sabu was a hacker from a collective called Lulsec, and him and Richard Hammond. No, that's the guy from.
That's the guy from Top Gear.
James Hammond. Sorry, it's a combination of two of the names. James Hammond, I think was his name. Yeah, right. Him and Sabu hacked Stratfor. Now, Stratfor is a sort of CIA offshoot that just so happens to have started in Texas at exactly the same time that InfoWars started. And some Stratfor staff just so happen to work for InfoWars. Probably a coincidence. Anyway, it's like a sort of, it's like a military, it's like a contractor, like a sort of investigative, like arm of the CIA, but it's a sort of non-governmental, so it gives it that sort of disconnect. Basically, this guy Sabu, who helped the Stratfor hack and was one of the very, very first people to say, "Let's occupy Wall Street," was an FBI informant that had been flipped by the FBI months before. And so the hack on Stratfor and the promotion of Occupy Wall Street came directly from an already flipped FBI informant.
Okay.
So yeah, so the idea is that basically, like, yeah, it was a setup. Now, why did they set it up? To monitor people, to see who would go there and to take the photograph, to see if you can manipulate people in a certain way. Gamergate was exactly the same thing. We frame it in a certain way, and it's on the internet. I think Gamergate was the precursor to Cambridge Analytica, and I'd be astonished if it wasn't similar people. It's online manipulation. It's the idea is to get people into a community, right? It's manufacture of consent, right? Again, which again is a kind of conspiracy theory. The idea being that basically the people at the top of the society tell you what is up, what is down, what is left and what is right and stuff. And basically through that, you go, all right, yeah, I know what's the score. I know what's up and what's down. Therefore, you know what's right. And this was the thing with Gamergate. They create this this group that you're a part of, tell you that Zoe Quinn's a bitch, right? Okay, and that the whole system of reviewing games is corrupt. And all of a sudden, you've got like-minded people. You know exactly where you sit in the world. You know exactly what's up, what's down, and everybody's happy. So, so that's it. And I think, say, Gamergate was the precursor to Cambridge Analytica, basically.
Well, didn't Steve Bannon try and recruit?
Oh, 2 seconds. I do apologise. My friend's just turned up.
No.
It's all right. We can carry on. You can sit there and bloody well be quiet.
Yeah, I won't keep you too much longer. We'll do this again, mate. We'll do this again, absolutely. But didn't Steve Bannon try and recruit a lot of Gamergate?
Yeah, totally. And Steve Bannon was involved. Yeah, well, absolutely. And Steve Bannon was basically involved in. Breitbart was the arm of proliferation of the kind of propaganda stories, anti-immigration stories, et cetera, that were being used in Cambridge Analytica. And prior to that, Bannon had been involved with a company, I think they're called SIC, but I may be wrong about that. And essentially what they were doing, they were involved in World of Warcraft. And what they'd do is they'd go and they'd hire people to, I don't play it, so there's certain things like swords and, you know, shit that you can get in the game that is like leveled up, but you have to do all sorts of crap to get those things. So what they'd do is they'd hire some kid in Romania and tell him, you're spending the next 200 hours doing whatever tasks you need to do to get this sword. And then we're going to take that sword off you and we're going to sell it to people for actual physical cash. And the only problem with this company was that basically, well, aside from, it's not, that's a bit sketchy, but it's not illegal or anything. But the other than Steve Bannon, there were three other members of the board of this this group. Every single one of them is a proven paedophile. Like there was Mark Collins Rector, Brock Pierce, and another guy whose name I can never remember. All of whom have been convicted of being paedophiles, right? Okay, and they're also Mark Collins Rector that were friends with Brian Singer. Brian Singer, who's also been accused of being a paedophile. Who else were they friends with? Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos, who was on Brian Singer's boat watching paedophiles basically have sex with young kids. It's all connected to Bannon and Trump. Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein for many, many years. He was also friends with Arif Schaefer, John Casablancas, Jean-Luc Brunel, all convicted paedophiles. Donald Trump was mentored by Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn, connected to McCarthyism. If anyone's ever seen the stage play Angels in America, I would recommend that you do. Admitted that he was part of a paedophile ring in Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha, Nebraska is apparently where the paedophile ring connected to Lawrence King and Paul Benassi took place, and that's actually came out in court. So, yeah, there's dodginess afoot, like lots and lots of dodginess afoot, and it's connected with, as I say, powerful people. There seems to be a side caveat of they like to have sex with young boys, but the connection to the computer industry is that basically, like, again, in a similar way to the way that the alt media is an established group with established ups, downs, like you said, Pizzagate, we could say George Soros, children underground like tunnels, and everyone will go, well, that sounds real. It's the same thing with gamers. Gamers were a group that could be studied, and there are certain attributes to that group. There are certain things that they won't tolerate, and there's certain things that they will tolerate.
And they've definitely been radicalized by these groups.
Absolutely. And again, through places like 4chan, 8chan, even to a degree, sort of things on Reddit and stuff like that. And it's part of that owning the libs, isn't it? It's trolls. You're trolling people. But that was cascaded into Donald Trump. And also, like, the media people around him, Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin and Stephen Crowder and Alex Jones, InfoWars, flipped and started basically, we're owning the libs now. We're owning the satanic Democrats. And it's like, well, you've been gamed. You've been totally gamed. You're being used. Like, and again, I appreciate that is a bit conspiratorial, but
well, at the end of the day, like, humans do want to manipulate each other, to get whatever power they want. That is like it's a trait of humanity that a lot of psychopaths do. We lie to people to get something out of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not really that far out.
No, it's not. But again, I'm very appreciative of what you're actually trying to do with this channel, and I don't want to upend that, I don't want to upend that, really. Also, I don't want to come across as a complete nutter. So this is why I'm sort of skating around it a little bit, because it's, I mean, I wouldn't say I haven't abandoned everything. As I say, I still think there's something dodgy with 9/11. I still think that Cambridge Analytica is a thing. I think mind control was a thing. I've abandoned some of my beliefs. Like, I no longer think, like, I don't think that the music industry is used in quite the overt way that it used to be thought to be used and stuff like that. There's all this Jay-Z and stuff like that. I don't think it's quite the red flag that it might be. I think it's just again marketing.
Yeah, well, during that time as well, during that that Illuminati boom of Jay-Z and Beyonce, Rihanna, all that stuff, Rihanna came out and admitted that she was doing it on purpose.
Well, this is it, because you get
everyone was talking about it. I might as well do it, and so she just carried on, and it got bigger and bigger, and she got millions and millions and millions of clicks.
Exactly. This is it, because basically, again, you've got this core audience that are looking for X, Y, and Z, and if you can basically drop those breadcrumbs, that's interesting. QAnon, drop those breadcrumbs, and people will follow it, basically. So
they made money off it.
Yeah.
In that time, there was T-shirts with Illuminati, triangles, and all of that, and they made money off it.
Yeah, my mate was just saying people were making money off of it as well. Like, do you know what I mean? And also
created a market. Something created its own little market, which is how marketing works.
Yeah.
And then milked it for a while, and now it's gone.
Yeah, I don't know whether you heard that, but essentially
I did.
Milked it, basically. So yeah, this is entirely it. And so these are the aspects, again, that you've got to kind of be wary of. That basically, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. If it fits perfectly, it's probably too good to be true. Because again, life is far more complicated than people would have you believe.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a lot more boring.
Yes.
Like the fact Rihanna doing all that occult imagery, the answer is going to really bore you. But that's what I'm trying to get to. I try and tell conspiracy theorists like myself, your questions are valid.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is find out the real answers to the questions that I had that were answered by conspiracies or answered by the grand conspiracy. So, looking into real corruption, real people that are actually trying to manipulate other people, that is those are real answers to the real questions that I've had. So having you on, helps with that kind of stuff, because you're a guy that does actually look into that stuff, even if some people might think it's a bit conspiratorial, but I don't think you rely too much on that many assumptions.
I'm not immune, like
you're
anybody.
Not,
like, do you know what I mean? Like, particularly when you get into stuff and you think, oh, that would just make it just perfect or whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I do like to think. But again, maybe I'm not right in this, but that I tend to be more of a let's look at the facts sort of thing. I'll tell you for why as well, because when I got dragged into this, I thought, well, how am I going to talk about it? I haven't experienced this. I don't know. So the only thing I can do is find the facts and present the facts and go, I don't know whether this is true or there's a degree of evidence that suggests, for example, declassified documents from MKUltra show that basically some really horrific experiments were done and were successful via, I don't know, the medium of hypnosis, say, or implants into people's brains and stuff like that, and to manipulate their actions and thoughts. Like, is it as clear cut as you're in a trance and now go and kill blah 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 blah? No, it's not quite as clear cut as that, but there is, again, elements of nastiness that have gone off. And so that's kind of what I try to do is look at, like, what can I prove, or what is a sort of a line. Now, obviously, the problem is, because of that, you do always kind of draw stuff in. I mean, and here's the thing, that's the problem that everybody needs to get over with in the conspiracy world, is these knowns. This, well, we know that this is this, so this means this. And it's like, you don't know this is this. That's the point. Like, you know, we know George Soros is evil, so anything that he puts his name to is evil. Ergo, Black Lives Matter's bad. And it's like, let's track back through that. Like, we don't know that he's evil. Can you tell me exactly what he's done? Like, seriously. Like, and then, like, stuff like the Great Reset. It's like, no one can explain to me what it is, because nobody knows what it is, because it isn't really a thing. Like, it's lobbying, it's corporations trying to extend lobbying power to governments, which is kind of nefarious, right? Okay. At the same time, trying to paint themselves as altruistic and concerned with the environment. They aren't. No. They are, right? There is an element, again, with all of these think tanks, the WEF, of like, you don't want corporations having a lot of power over political groups, and groups like this lead towards that through either brown envelopes or basically, you know, utilization of infrastructure and stuff like that. Now, that is a potential problem, but it isn't the New World Order, and it isn't communism. And again, it's these knowns. Well, we know that all these Great Reset soldiers, blah, blah, blah. It's like, how do we know that? Can you explain to me, as if I'm thick, how that's going to actually happen? Like, well, no. You know why you can't? Because it's nebulous. It's not exactly a thing. It's not a thing. Like, but again, it's that buzzword, that snarl word, that like, oh, who's the bad guy today? Oh, it's George Soros. Oh, who's the bad guy today? Oh, it's Bill Gates. Oh, who's the bad guy today? Oh, it's Klaus Schwab.
This is what I was going to say. Like, you know, you're an old school truther like myself. Mm-hmm. Did you hear of World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, or George Soros before the 2010s?
Never.
Like, were they the big guys?
No.
And also, they're like the ones that are directly underneath, like, Lucifer on the pyramid or something today. And you're like, how old are they? They must have been like at the top back in the 90s. So why weren't we speaking about them then? It's because it's just a new boogeyman.
Yeah, like, precisely.
Being placed there.
People say, I don't think you understand how much influence the WEF has. Oh, I'm sure they've got a huge amount of influence. Can you name one thing that they've done before that's changed society? No. No, me neither. Yeah, like, but this is the point. These you come into things with assumptions. Well, we know that they can change the weather, so blah blah blah. It's like, I don't know that we do know that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and again, that's what gets on my nerves at the minute, is this basically like assumptions or stuff that basically just isn't true. Like, that's what gets my goat. And like, you're on the fucking internet, right? Okay, you've got access to find out whether this is true. Take 5 seconds to look it up. Like, but that defeats the purpose of doing it, doesn't it? Because
you're on the medium that you've just been given the information from, so you can go and search it on the medium that you're on.
And then again, this contrarianism where, well, the fact checkers say that it's this, so the opposite might be doing. It's like, no, again, it doesn't work like that. It's not as simplistic as that. Like, you know, this is real life. It isn't an 8-bit mystery game from the fucking early 80s on Amiga where, well, if John says this, John's a liar. And like, come on, like, do you know what I mean? It's just, what are you going to do, mate? What are you going to do?
I don't know. All right, we're gonna cut it today.
Cool.
I think we should do another chat soon.
Oh, I'd love to. I enjoyed this.
Definitely, it's good to speak to someone who's been in it for so long as well. You know.
Well, I just hope I haven't dragged you back into it with the pure strength of my charisma.
No. Tell everyone where to find your stuff, where to speak to you.
If people are interested, it's neilsandersmindcontrol.com. And again, like, it's stuff about mind control, about Cambridge Analytica. I wrote a book about Charles Manson. I'm sure I'm all over YouTube. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter. And again, like, I am kind of in this conspiracy milieu, but I do kind of like to think I'm a bit more sensible than some people. I'm not infallible, but, you know.
None of us are. None of us are.
So, like, yeah. If you don't believe any of this stuff, buy one of my books. And if you don't like that, buy another one and keep buying them until you believe.
Sound. Yeah, I enjoyed speaking to you, mate. Enjoyed speaking to you. We should definitely do it again.
I really like your channel. I like the stuff that you're doing with, you know, looking back at the old stuff and going, yeah, this didn't happen, did it? Like, and, you know, it was like stuff when like 2012 came around and we didn't all ascend to light beings and stuff like that. And the world didn't end, and, you know, the red dwarf planet didn't crash into us and stuff like that. I was astonished that people like David Wilcock had any credibility after that.
Right.
But it just shows that people, again, are just quite willing to overlook stuff. Like, you know, when the world didn't end in 1997, like, and stuff like that. Certain people are like, well, are you going to address that?
Yeah, like, you know, I've done them videos on Millennium 2000 and Lucifer 2000. I watched them in 2003. And, and it said like the New World Order would be established by 2000 millennium, and I'm watching it in 2003 going, yeah, this is real. They know what they're talking about. What the fuck did I do?
Got delayed. This all-powerful Illuminati who rule the entire planet and have access to literally everything. They've obviously just delayed it by a few years for whatever reasons. And the incredible symbology, which I was told was desperately, desperately important, they've just sodded that off.
Fantastic. All right, man. Keep in touch, all right?
Definitely, mate. Yeah.
Peace. Cool. Catch you later.
Right. Nice one, man.
Yep.
Take care.